Hello, everybody. I'm Mel Doerr, the Aloha Shirt Psychic, and welcome to my newest program. It's going to be called Morning Moments with Mel, and I'll be doing it probably 2 or 3 mornings a week. So we'll talk about politics, world events, um, elections, and at some point, you can even put questions on the community page. But so morning moments with Mel, grab yourself a cup of Joe, decaf, and let's go. The first thing like to discuss is weather. I cannot remember in Chicago in February when it's been this warm. The A couple nights ago, a couple days ago, the temperature here was in the 70s, like 72. Um, Day before yesterday on Tuesday, it was 74. And then Tuesday night, I was doing a show with Arthur, Ease Your Mind, Thoreau, and the dog came upstairs and she was seeming kind of needy. She was nudging me and wanted me to pet her. And I had predicted a lot of tornadoes for the Chicago area and inclement weather, big inclement weather. And I had a feeling of uneasiness for a couple of days before Tuesday. Anyway, the dog came and she was nudging me and I was petting her, trying to do the show at the same time. And um, so she seemed to calm down a little bit. And then a thunderclap. She heard a thunderclap, as did I. And a lot of times she gets nervous when there's thunder, but she was shaking and she was just trying to get my attention. And she would go to the door of the bedroom and come back. And I'm thinking, what's up, girl? And right before we were going to end the show, about 3 or 4 minutes before the show was going to end, my cell phone went off and it was, and it's, in yellow, um, tornado warnings, take cover now, get in a basement. If you're in a mobile home, go somewhere safe. And so I told Arthur, I've got to go because I'm petrified of tornadoes. I went through one in 1974. But anyway, so I ended the show. By the time I got downstairs, grabbed my laptop. Don't ask me why I grabbed my laptop. When you're not thinking, you're just reacting. I yelled downstairs for Gary to call the dog and put her leash and her collar on her. By the time I got downstairs to the main level of my townhouse, sirens were going off, and we've had sirens in the past, but never to the degree they were on Tuesday evening. They they would just and you could hear them here and from other areas as well. And then they stopped and they went on again. So I took a lantern, electric lantern, and all kinds of stuff in the basement really fast. And we got in the basement, and then it seemed like, I don't know, half hour or so, and I'm texting Linda Grindle. She was doing a live show, and I'm calling, talking to Arthur, tell him I'm in the basement, calling friends and family to make sure they're okay. And the all clear happened. And the dog, when Gary went upstairs, this dog rarely goes in the basement. She just doesn't like to go down there. But she came down there with me and she lay beside me on the easy chair. And she's a sweet dog, but she doesn't like for you to hug her. But she was right up there beside me. So I think she sensed my fear and I was trying to calm hers. But when Gary went upstairs, she ran up with him to make sure he was okay. She ran back downstairs and then she was trying to get me to come upstairs. And so she was checking on both of us. So she was very concerned and she was protecting us. Luckily, we didn't have any harm. Luckily, our electricity didn't go out because our townhouse is all electric, heat and everything. And so, we were safe. My office was safe. All my friends and family here were safe. So that was a blessing. But people nowadays are worried about war and who's going to win the election and all of that. But I think what concerns me more is this climate change. And my guides tell me that we haven't tipped the scale yet, uh, so that we haven't tipped the scale far enough so that it can't, so that we haven't done irreparable harm. But if we continue to tip the scale at some point, there's no coming back. So, I see a time coming when our politicians, our elected officials, world politicians will start to care about the environment and will start to nurture the environment and cut down these carbon emissions that are causing this greenhouse effect. Um, I've seen the climate change over the last 5 years. When I first moved to Chicago back in 1983, I thought I had moved to Siberia. I mean, it would snow in maybe October, and we wouldn't see the ground again until spring, and we had huge snowstorms. This past winter, we've only had about 3 snows. The biggest one was about 4 or 5 inches, but it was about 36 degrees, and so the snow didn't stick. So climate change really concerns me, and my guides tell me that we haven't tipped the scale too far as of yet. And I do see at some point a lot of politicians, giving incentives for electric cars, hydrogen-powered vehicles, that the only byproduct of that is water. And so, unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot more ferocious storms this year hitting the East Coast, huge tornadoes. And in fact, I understand now that they changed the rating system for I'm sorry, for hurricanes, from they've now got a level 6. So I see a lot of hurricanes hitting the East Coast. Um, I had a client today and she wanted to move to Florida. And I said, I wouldn't do it because I see a lot more tornadoes hitting Sanibel Island. Uh, and also, uh, on the west coast of Florida, I see hurricanes whipping up through the Gulf, hitting Alabama, Florida, and they're more ferocious when they come up through the Gulf. Um, Unfortunately, a lot more flooding on the west coast. Um, as we speak, wildfires are consuming the panhandle in northern Texas. And I spoke with Kim Copeland, and she lives more near Austin, but she said that these wildfires are really, really serious and quite large. And she said she's never seen anything like it in Texas. Now I understand there they evacuated America's main nuclear weapons facility. Um, I don't see the fire hitting that. If it does, we'll be safe. I don't see anything like a Fukushima or any strong release of nuclear materials. So thank goodness for that. But the thing fueling those fires in Texas, dry grass, winds, and it's all due to unseasonably warm temperatures. So, it was back to Illinois or back to Chicago. It was crazy that um, Tuesday night, before the storms hit, the temperature was, I think, in the 70s. Wednesday, yesterday, uh, the temperature was like 24. And it's supposed to be that way today. So, and then by next week, it's going to warm up again. And I just can't remember every year it's trending where we're getting warmer and warmer winters and our summers are cooling a little bit. So, I'm asking my guides if we will get a grip on this climate change so that it won't be so runaway. And they're saying the answer is yes, that at some point politicians are going to get their collective heads together in large organizations and say that we've got to do something to stop this, because Mother Nature will always win. And we've got to stop this greenhouse effect. And at some point we will. So let's all call our representatives. I don't care if they're Democrat or Republican, then tell them that we demand something be done to stop this climate change. I mean, I hear people saying there's no such thing as climate change. I'm like, have you walked outside lately? So, Okay, next on the news, I was doing a show with Kim Copeland last night. Oh, and by the way, um, Kevin Chandler is going to be live on my channel this evening. Um, and so we'll be answering questions about climate, about politics, world events, world affairs. But people were putting in the chat, and Kim and I were talking about answering questions about world peace and love. And I do see a time when when this whole Gaza thing will be over. Thank goodness for that. But I don't see the Ukrainian thing ending right away. Um, I do see, even though it looks like Russia might be not winning, but getting advances, at some point, I see Ukraine getting the weapons they need. And I see Ukraine uh, not giving up. I've still seen Ukraine getting airplanes, jet airplanes. I see them getting weapons, and I see them getting more funding, both from NATO and from the European Union. And so, at some point, I see Ukraine having Crimea back. And at some point, I see Putin being gone. And um, I see a democratic Russia and a democratic Ukraine. And at some point, I think Ukraine, or I see that Ukraine and Russia will be allies. It's going to take a while. So that war is going to take a while. Um, I think the Middle East for a bit is going to seem like a powder keg, but I've said this before, and I'm convinced that Putin and Iran uh, worked with Hamas to on that attack against Israel, but Netanyahu needs to stop now. He's won, but what he's doing is wrong. I'm very pro-Israel, but I see Netanyahu gone at some point too, and I see a leader coming to Israel. I see another female at some point who is not going to put up with anyone, doing an act of war against Israel, but would be a real world leader in bringing about peace, and will have two states, Israel and Palestine, peacefully coexisting. So um, I see uh, at least I don't see a third world war. I know Putin's plans, but I see him gone. So anyway, uh, I'm not worried to travel. At some point there'll be peace. But a lot of people in the comments were talking about the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that they would hear Trump's immunity claim in the election interference case. I didn't think they would, but I sense and I see that they're going to say that if a president commits an act that breaks the law, and if it's not in accordance with presidential duties, then they're not immune from prosecution. And they're going to rule that Trump is not immune from prosecution. He interfered in the election. That's illegal. That was not part of his presidential duties. And some of the things he's being charged with, he did before he was president. The election interference case was after he was still president, but even after January the 20th or 21st, Trump still was creating issues about the big lie and things like that. So my feeling is the Supreme Court's going to say he's not immune from prosecution. And people are worried that will the trial happen like before and maybe during the election? I see the trial happening before the election. But remember, there's a lot of trials going on with Trump. Um, the other thing is, let's just say, for example, that the Supreme Court said that he is immune, which they won't, but let's say they did. Still, I'm feeling that he's going to be found guilty in New York uh, for the hush money thing and before 2016 that he paid to Stormy Daniels and then covered it up. And I also see he's going to be found guilty criminally of fraud charges in New York. And so the federal government doesn't really have any say so. They can't, a president coming in can't pardon somebody in the state because it wasn't a federal crime. So, the whole Georgia thing, Trump's idea is to deceive, divert, destroy. uh, but the whole thing in Georgia with Fani Willis and that, she's going out with the lead prosecutor and blah, blah, blah. Well, I see somebody coming forward there and saying that the lead prosecutor's ex-wife was given money under the table to break the story about the lead prosecutor and Fani Willis having a relationship. But the lead prosecutor's ex-wife was having an affair with his best friend, and that's why she divorced him. So, I see the case in Georgia going on. I do. Uh, so let's say the Supreme Court said that Trump is immune, which they will not. It's not going to get him out of hot water. I see him found guilty for a lot of different things that he's pulled. Um, so Jack Smith has a lot up his sleeve. So I don't think he's worried about it. Um, I the election might be close, but I keep feeling Biden winning. Um, so I just want to, everybody seemed like they were angry about, the Supreme Court deciding to hear the case and all of that. Just breathe, relax, rest, because I still feel that they're going to say that he's not immune from prosecution. And I see the Judge Chutkan still going on. The documents case going into that, I see Cannon, she's going to do some more judicial overreach that she can't do legally. And I see an appeals court saying she can't do it. And at some point, I see her removed from that case. So that case will go on. Um, you know, so basically what Trump is doing and his team with, going to all these appeals and all of this and all of that is just to delay these trials, hopefully until after the election, because then Trump thinks if he wins, he can pardon himself. But I don't see it going that far. A president, in my opinion, my guides say couldn't pardon themselves. So, because that means that a president could commit murder and then pardon himself. So, the Supreme Court is going to say he's not immune. So just everybody breathe, relax. Um, I just don't want everybody to get really worried. I just think, it's another tactic of Trump to deceive, divert, detract, distract, divide, duplicitness, destroy. He's going to try every little tactic he can. As far as him paying out the, I forgot, what was it, 454 million is concerned, an appeals court judge ruled that he must come up with the full amount to cover the 454 million verdict in the civil fraud trial. And he's going to try to delay paying E. Jean Carroll, but he's going to have to pay that money as well. I think the judge did say that he could borrow money from banks or on some of his assets in New York or some of his assets. But any bank that loans him money to pay him out or to loan him money so he can pay off what he owes, that 454 million, I wouldn't do business with that bank because it's pretty obvious if they loan him the money that they're not going to get paid back and he'll find a way around it. I do see some of his assets being seized and him forced to sell a lot of assets. But he's trying to appeal all this stuff, but the appeals court is going to say he has to pay. And so my guides have always told me that it will be the women that bring him down. And that's exactly what's going on. Um, what I see going on too is that, everybody's worried here again, as I said, about the whole um, uh, SCOTUS hearing, is he immune from prosecution for, the insurrection? But I still see the criminal trial taking place, uh, as I said, on charges relating to the scheme to cover up the hush money that he made before the 2016 presidential election. And my guides tell me he's going to be found guilty there. So uh, I still see him found guilty of a couple of things. There's so many charges coming up against him. Um, and there's a lot of whistleblowers that are going to come forth as well. All right. Everybody was worried about the government shutdown. And my guides had told me that that what they would do is they would agree to fund the government, um, but as a stopgap. So they would pass a short-term spending bill to head off a partial government shutdown, and then, kick the can for, 3 or 4 more months. And we'll be having the same thing happening then too. I don't see a shutdown, but the same thing over and over. And my guides are showing me that many American citizens are going to be tired of, the MAGAs playing kick the can, and that's not going to look good for them for the election at all. Um, People are saying that, a lot of people are angry with Biden and won't vote for him because of the whole Israel-Palestinian thing. But, a lot can happen between now and November. And between now and then, I see that whole Palestinian thing is there's going to be peace. There'll be a resolution, ceasefires, all of that. Near future, I do think that Netanyahu is going to um, have the I don't want to say invasion, but um, he is going to attack, where he's saying he's going to attack. But the problem is the people there have no place to go. Um, and so it's not going to bode well for Netanyahu. I can tell you that right now. I'm sorry, y'all, there's something in my eye. And so I'm blinking it because there's something in it. Yeah, my eyeball, right? Anyway, um, so people are mad at Biden supposedly about the Israel-Palestinian thing, but a lot can happen between now and then. And world pressure is going to be put on Netanyahu to back down. I see Netanyahu gone as well, and I see him held. He's going to be under indictment, under criminal charges, and I see him being found guilty. But a lot can happen, as I said, between now and the election. And so people that might be angry right now and saying they're not going to vote for Biden, that was in the primary, but in the general election, they will. And so, I see Biden's popularity numbers rising and rising and rising. So that's good. But people are going to get really angry about the MAGAs, the Republicans, and Johnson, Preacher Mike, with this short, and they, as I said, kicking the can for, the spending bill. At some point, I see like they're going to try this kicking the can a couple more times. And they're doing it to try to make the Democrats look bad, but it's going to blow up in their faces. And I see, moderate Republicans saying they've had enough of it. I don't think Johnson is going to be able to serve out his term as the House Speaker. I see him being removed at some point. So, if I seem like I'm rambling, I'm just going on and on here. I just heard that Trump is removed from the primary ballot in Illinois. A judge here said that he's going to be removed from the primary ballot. I feel like the Supreme Court's going to dance their way around that and say that, you know, that his name has to be put on the ballot. So those states, unfortunately, aren't going to win. But I feel the Supreme Court will dance around it in some way. Um, it's just impossible to almost predict how they're going to vote. But I know one thing, they're going to say that he is not immune from prosecution. The other thing I'm a little bit nervous about, and my guides have assured me it's going to be okay, is that I forget who was the one, I can't think of his name, but he ran when DeSantos' seat was vacated, and he's a Democrat and he won, and they still haven't seated him yet. They still haven't sworn him in as a House member. My feeling is after the election in November, that the Democrats will take back over the House in large numbers and the Senate. But what I'm a little nervous about is that some way or another, they're going to try to keep from seating uh, those Democrats that have won seats that traditionally belong to Republicans in the House. They're going to try to do something like that. You mark my words. But my guides tell me they will not succeed in doing it. So that's a relief. But I felt this coming for a long time. And I think a lot of these states, you know, are trying things as litmus test to see how much they can get by with. Um, like, you know, Alabama, that, you know, embryos are children. Um, you know, I see that being struck down as well. I see Roe v. Wade being upheld at some point. So, but here again, I'm nervous about, well, you know, in the House, when we take that back over, will the people be that win, the Democrats that win be seated? And they're going to try some shenanigans, but they won't win. They will not win. And they'll try some shenanigans with the electors again, but they will not win at that either. So, um, that's about all I've got for now. I tried to pack as much in as I could, and I've got my notes here. Um, so everybody that with the whole SCOTUS thing, just take a deep breath, relax, because I'm telling you that they're going to say he's not immune. Okay, this has been Morning Moments with Mel, and I'm going to do this probably around 3 times a week. I'll keep them short, maybe 30 to 35 minutes. I hope you've enjoyed this. So now have your cup of coffee, relax, and go about your day. Um, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support. And it's my pleasure to be able to do this. So um, namaste and aloha from Chicago to all of you. Stay well.